Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with some of my favorite women on this planet because today we're going to be talking about wisdom that women should have learned in school. And I've gathered these women here together because they've all got wisdom that has been absolutely profound on my journey. And the amount of times I've said to myself, I wish I learned this in school. So I'd love to go around, and if we all just briefly say a little introduction about ourselves and maybe sharing what you wish that you learnt in school. So maybe Jennifer, would you like to start?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Harmony, and I'm an EFT expert and trauma detective, which means I adore diving in deep with people and permanently releasing core wounds and deep-seated subconscious beliefs so that we can unleash our genius, reconnect our soul, and really stay on track in life. And I've been doing this work for about 17 years, and I've been doing my own inner journey and this kind of work for about 20 years and lived nomadically for 17 years. I'm originally from Scotland and I'm based in Ubud Valley. And the wisdom that I think women should have learned in school is so vast, but definitely a lot around boundaries, around the power of our mind and self-love. I think those are three of the keys. Yeah. I'm going to nominate Karina to go next.
Hello, everybody. I am Karina Kalila. I am a breathwork practitioner. I have an album on Spotify and I run a breathwork school called the Embodied Breath Academy. And I just love humans. I love us learning. I love learning about ourselves. I love learning about humans and how different we all are. And I think my motto with life is come as you are, come unashamed, come as the deepest expression of you. And I've been doing this work for 5 years, and it's a whole story how I got into it, but it's I just have seen the transformation in myself, and I love what I do. So what women should have learned at school, there is, like Jennifer said, so many things. Power of the cycle is one. I really believe that. I started to track women's cycles that were working with me and noticing how they were breathe to breathe, week to week, and how the cycle actually had an impact on how they breathed. And it was really, really, it's been quite a fascinating thing to witness. And just the power of breath. So I feel like we could have learned how to breathe. Sarah, do you want to go next? I feel like that's a good segue into you.
Yeah, well, I'm Sarah Ahmed. It's an honor to be here. I'm also a breathwork practitioner, but for me, it was about complete physical breakdown and moving to Manhattan and just trying to work, make it, all coming from wounding of just wanting mummy and daddy to love me and see me. But then my womb broke down with, several different diseases, including PCOS, endometriosis, and cervical cancer. And it was like this wake-up call of oh shit, I can't keep living the way that I'm living. So then I transitioned into this period of my life living in India and Bali, Costa Rica, Thailand, of just going, okay, what is the next layer of healing that I can put my body through? And whether that was, energetic healing, Reiki, and bringing my feminine and my masculine energies into balance, or there was also detox, there was breath work, there was kinesiology, so many different things. So if I could, I think there's so many things that we want our little girls to be taught in school and wish that we were taught. If I could synthesize it, I think the importance of understanding that we have male and female energies and that we can actually dictate our day energetically in completely different states. And if we lose touch with one, we can get sick and our cycle and our reproductive organs can break down. So that feels really important. And Rebecca?
Yes, I'm Rebecca May. I am a former hairdresser and makeup artist, and I've worked in that industry throughout many areas, including fashion and film and television. And throughout that time, I had the blessing and honor to work with so many women. And women from all over the world would sit in my chair and share with me their stories around their own self-love journey. And through that, I worked out, I was investigating this piece around how this cycled back into our menstrual cycles. I would notice when somebody would arrive and be like, oh, I'm on my period, and how her energy and what her conversation was alike. And reference that to how women that were in my field that were celebrating their moon time. My own journey with my menstrual health also led me to really researching the spiritual side of menstruation. And that's where I find myself now in the world of, I guess you could call me a menstrual coach. I've also been called a blood witch, and I quite like that. That feels kind of juicy to me. And this is my piece. My goal is reconnecting women to the spiritual nature and the spiritual qualities to their blood and to their menstrual cycle. Yeah, so I have so much to share, and it is such a multi-layered topic that you know, tunes in with what all of the women in this project's topics are. And I feel like it's a beautiful, beautiful offering that we can all learn from each other and share with each other. One piece of wisdom that, actually there's two pieces of wisdom that I would have loved to have learned in school. And that is to celebrate the fact that just as we are the sunshine, we are the storm, and how to blend my foundation properly. So, you know, we're often these young girls that are out there in the world, and we don't have that guidance as well. So that's sort of marrying my worlds together. Thank you.
Thank you for all sharing. Wow, so much wisdom here, and I really feel we could go down so many different pathways to talk about this. But what I'm hearing is a bit of a common thread, and that's around the cycle wisdom. And for me, you know, there's been so many things I've learned along the years, but the biggest moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a different woman every day. My hormones are constantly changing, and men don't have that. That was the biggest aha moment for me. It changed my life. So I would love to hear from each of you, since you started to understand your cycle and connect with your cycle, what did you see change for you? Anyone feel free to jump in. I mean, for me, the biggest change was noticing like my digestion actually, bowel syndrome, but actually my hormones were just changing and my hormones are out of balance. And then as soon as I started working with my hormones, I understood what was going on in my body and had so much more compassion for myself. So I had more energy and I knew when to rest. And that just spiraled into so many different areas of my life. And now it even meetings, scheduling holidays, when to launch a program, when to film content, it just comes into everything for me. So yeah, I'd love to hear your stories, because I feel like so many women, even that I meet here in Bali, don't even know about this. And we've been doing this work for years. This for me is it. It really is.
Yeah, I'd like to segue in there and jump on in. And I think, you know, I mean, there's so much, and I know all of you will touch on different layers. For me, it's understanding that the womb is a portal, it's a stargate. And as we go into the bleed, it's like the psychic abilities of the bliss, the connection, the fact that during that time of the month, women experience a connection between their right and left brain hemispheres, firing off all those neurotransmitters that never happens for men. And what that offers us is that psychic wisdom, that portal into seeing. But we don't understand that. You know, for me, I grew up with endometriosis, which means oftentimes I was throwing up. I was in so much pain. I was on subscription medication for 15 years growing up, because anytime I started to bleed, I was like down and out. you know? And so I think the common thread for women nowadays is to associate going into their menstrual cycle as something that's painful. And if it's not terribly painful, then it's like, grab the chocolate and let's turn on Netflix, you know? But instead, rather than seeing, like, if our energies are in balance, our hormones are in balance, and we've honored all 4 stages of that menstrual cycle, then as we go into bleed and all of those hormones go from their peak, like, and all that PMS, and then they drop down, we should be able to go into a period of bleeding where we feel so connected to our body and the Divine Mother, new downloads and ideas coming through. For me, my period is psychedelic. It is so shamanic. It is so beautiful. Goosebumps on my body as I say that, you know, and at times there's still a little bit of pain here and there. I think as the collective and everything that's going on, we're processing a lot of things. But I have come to, you know, years of my life where every time I go into that cycle, there's no cravings. There's no need for heavy starchy foods, no needs for fat or for chocolate or anything. It's just kind of this bliss of sitting in my body and feeling at home in this body. And that's what balance will feel like. And I believe that every woman on the planet should get an opportunity to know what that feels like.
Yeah. I'd love to hear from you, Rebecca, because I know this is like your...
I was just reaching for the unmute there. Thank you, Sarah. That's such like, to hear those words is like, it just makes my heart burst to know that there's other women doing this work and living in this way. And for me, it was inspired to understand what was moving through my body month after month, year after year, from a very young age, probably around 15, 16, I started to notice that I was really, I'm going to choose the word suffering with my cycle. And it was an unusual space to suffer. I was working through premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD, and that brings with it a different set of balancing different hormones. So yeah, since I've started to live psychically, I can also see and feel when the fluctuations of hormones are dipping and affecting me around that middle of the month, when, you know, traditionally it's suggested that when we're ovulating, we're on this, like, you know, sort of high, where in fact women that work through PMDD, it's actually our dip down into what could only be described as spiraling into a dark hole. So yeah, I'm just really feeling that. And starting to understand my cycle, I was always very shy of studying these things. You know, I'm in my late 40s, soon to be 50, and my age group, we learnt from our mothers that are probably in their 70s and 80s now, and we just didn't have the words, the languaging. We didn't have the readily available Zoom calls, or even the books and literature out there was all very outdated and all very masculine orientated, and also very, I guess, scientific. It was, you know, they were written by professors and doctors and not by women that were actually experiencing this. So there was no information out there for PMDD. And I started seeing bioidentical hormone specialists. I was, at the age of 25, suggested to have a hysterectomy and told by a doctor that that would be, the chances of catching breast cancer would be better than the way I was living my life now, or at that time. And after years of this, I just was fed up, and I felt like I'd become a scientific experiment for doctors that really didn't know what it felt like to be woman. And this led me into studying the cycles. And through that ancient wisdom, through connecting to, like Sarah was saying, that psychic capacity that we have, the greatest gift for me was to learn to rest and feel. Not go on plugging it up with a tampon where I couldn't see and connect to my blood, popping 6 Nurophens and soldiering on. trying to keep up with the men that were in my workplace, you know, and only burning out my adrenals, only causing damage to my womb, not listening to my body when it was time to rest. So by just making that small change, resting when I was bleeding, it opened up the world to me, and I started to truly feel what it was like. And that rest throughout my moon week then gave me the capacity to cope with what trauma was resurfacing for me around the ovulation time. So I like Sarah said, and I know you all will too, like connecting into what the truest essence of our femininity is. And I believe that that's the blood, the womb wisdom, and the witchy wisdom that we all have, is the starting place to learning to be woman. So thank you.
I'd love to jump on next. Yeah, thank you so much, Rebecca and Sarah. I love talking about this. It's like this massive relief because, yeah, like I'm almost 42, and in the same way, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't like a Google that we could go and ask these sorts of questions to, and there was just so many limiting beliefs and negative information that was coming from the collective, from school, and it was almost like as women we all decided the periods were terrible things to be feared, and there was almost this trauma bonding around menstruation. And, you know, when I started bleeding when I was 15, my mom sort of was like, and that, and I was like, I don't know, what do either of them do? And I was actually in the Dalai Lama's complex in India, and there was a little advert in the toilet saying you can stop using tampons. And I was like, what? You know, and that was the first time I ever heard about moon cups. And that was like such a massive transformation for me to be able to start seeing my blood, and immediately the pain stopped. So I'm 42 since I was 25. There's just not been pain associated with my menstruation anymore. And but yeah, the point that I really wanted to make was around like how possible it is for us to let go of these limiting beliefs around menstruation, that it has to be painful, that this is the way that we need to bond with each other, because as sisters, as women, to bond and like support each other through our different phases, which are all so important. Like, you know, obviously the earth has our cycles, we as women, we have our cycles, and to be able to connect with each other. And it's amazing how women sync up and we bleed at the same time, or as a woman who's bleeding, connecting with my friends who are ovulating, and we all just remember the different seasons and uplift and inspire, or, you know, or just with each other through this journey. So yeah, thank you.
I love that, Jen. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I can sort of echo themes of everyone's story here, because I remember being, 14, 15, I got my period when I was 9 or 10. I was really young, and being folded over every single time I got my period. And like when I went to high school, I was one of, I went to an all-girls school, so it's just so normal to get your P's, like that's what we would call it. Oh, I've got my P's, I feel like shit. So we'd all like, oh, okay, that person feels like shit. And, that was actually really nice, because there was a certain element of support. And it was, at high school, it was never something that you could use as an excuse though, which sucked, and I then emulated that as a high school teacher, because I then went on to become a high school teacher, and I was a high school sport teacher, and the amount of girls that would be like, "No, miss, I'm on my period. I don't really want to." And I'd be like, get out there. And like, that's not, that wasn't probably the best advice that I could have given at the time. I remember a friend of mine saying to me about 1.5 years ago, so not long ago, and she said, "Karina, in the week that you've got your PMS, you should just stay home. Like, to your face, stay home. Don't go out. Just stay home." And because I would cry for 7 days straight, especially after COVID happened. So like when the world shut down, and I wasn't able to work, which was my vice to suppress my trauma. And, before that it was alcohol, and before that it was drugs. And so, I've always had a lid on top of my trauma. And then upon not being able to work, the PMS just ramped right up. I've always had really bad PMS. I was completely crazy, my ex-boyfriend's words, the week before my period. And then what I learned after realizing that my trauma had actually resurfaced and my PMS was getting worse was that there was a link between the fact that I was carrying unconscious trauma and how the world would feel like it was collapsing the week before my period. And so this wasn't the only reason why I went into trauma therapy, and I'm still, working through different aspects of, my childhood. I work with Jen sometimes, I breathe. And the more that I work on myself, the more I feel both sensitive to my needs and aware of the specific thing that I'm upset about during my PMS phase. And now it's not like the world's going to implode. It might be 1 or 2 days of like, I was going to swear, screw this stuff, oh, this and this is not quite right. It's not the time to take action, but it is the time to be acknowledging the fact that I'm not living fully in alignment. So I'm now seeing, now that I've worked through trauma, I'm now seeing how my luteal phase is there to teach me what's out of alignment. Before it was just like a big grey cloud, and now it feels like it feels a little bit more open and clear. It's like, oh, that's the problem. Oh, so much wisdom. And I love what Sarah said about the womb being a portal and it opening up. And it's just, the more I learn about this stuff, the more I'm like, wow, we are completely divine, amazing beings as being like women. Jodie, do you want to share something?
I love what you shared about PMS, because most women will think of, they might know a little bit about ovulation, they'll know about their period, and they'll know about the PMS phase. And if you say follicular or luteal phase, they're like, what's that? It's a foreign language. And I really would love to debunk that PMS isn't something that we need to live with, and to almost delabel that and to educate women that it's actually the luteal phase, and it is that time where things might come to the surface, where we may be more sensitive. But if we understand what is happening in our body and why, because the hormones are going like this, and that we're able to access both our left and right side of the brain, and everything shifting and moving, and it's more of a time to close doors and to evaluate what we've done, and then we can actually work with that energy in an empowering way. And I guess that kind of leads me on to the next question, like, by working with our cycles, how can we be more empowered as women? I'd love to hear some of your tips as to, at different phases of the cycle, what you do differently. For example, Karina, like, a really great time to maybe record your album, you could be in the follicular phase because the throat chakra is more open. So yeah, I'd love to hear some of your tips.
The most amazing thing was the best songs came when I was bleeding.
Wow.
And it would be, we'd record something and then we'd chop and change it. 40 minutes later, we'd have a track and it was done. And it was like, and the voice that would come out, it was just like, well, that's on point. So I was really surprised by that part of the process. And just to add to that, when I was working up at the Pyramids of Chi as a sound healer, often when I was bleeding, the people would have Kundalini awakenings, or like rising of Kundalini, or they would have real emotional and deep connections to themselves, emotional expressions and deep connections to themselves. And that was often when I was bleeding. And so I feel like the alchemy of the voice changes when face to face, because I also recorded a track when I was ovulating, and 3 tracks when I was ovulating, and it wasn't as on point as when I was bleeding. So it's that if anybody is listening to this who is a vocalist, or I would love for you to comment on this, because I think that I want to start a conversation about that, because I'm the only one that I know that does that. So yeah, that's my answer to that. Who would like to go next?
Yeah, beautiful. And I mean, that it makes a lot of sense, because that's when you're coming into the follicular phase, and also more connected. And I think, I mean, for me around ovulation, I have to really ground, because I'm like feeling like I'm riding faster on my scooter. I've got more energy. So for me at that time, I don't think I could sing either. So I generally find that period, like day 3, 4 of my cycle to like 10, is when I find I can communicate a lot clearer as well, and I'm more connected. So yeah, does anybody else have any times of their cycle that they love, or what do you do differently?
I'd just like to add to that. I totally get that, Karina. I think we are such immensely creative, artistic beings when we bleed, but to access that level of wisdom and inspiration and creative genius, we have to go, it's like women giving themselves permission to slow down, that would be the first step. And then women giving themselves permission to understand the womb cave. And I know that you have, adopted those certain things. And so now you're at a certain level where it's like that actually becomes a time of the month where, and I feel you, like my writing, I'm writing a few different books at the moment. And when I'm bleeding, it's like everything opens up, and it's just so incredible. I do want to share, Jodie, you said the question, how can tracking our cycle and moving with these 4 stages of the cycle empower women? Again, referencing what Karina was saying of like all of that unconscious trauma, subconscious trauma that was, it was like awakening, and it was getting stirred up when all of the hormones were getting stirred up. I think that's a really key point as to why it's such an incredibly empowering experience to learn about the stages of the cycle, because otherwise it almost just feels like a shit show sometimes, like when we're not taking care of our body, and then it's like we start to spiral. And it's almost like for the women that I work with polycystic ovarian syndrome, they will have cycles anywhere from 28 days up until 2 years. My period disappeared for 2 years. So when a woman is not having a monthly bleed, she's hanging out in the luteal phase for months, and she is going through the most intense PMS and cravings and fatigue. Like, what are you talking about, follicular ovulatory? I don't feel like I have any of that inspiration and energy. So as we start to track the cycles and we sync it up with the moon, which is how we always bled before endocrine disruptors and birth control, what happens is we feel incredibly empowered of like, there is an intelligence here. It's like that deep syncing up with Mother Nature. And like, this isn't just one big blurry, murky mess of like, oh, like what's going on? Instead, it's like, no, there are some things arising right now because my hormones have just dipped or risen or whatever. And this is an opportunity for me to clear my schedule and go within and do some deep work, knowing that it's temporary, knowing that these cravings and these emotions will pass, the storm will pass as it always does. And when I come out of that period of rest, there's going to be another peak in energy and creativity and inspiration and motivation. So I think it's so deeply empowering, just to clear up the murkiness of like what is happening, and instead tracking it and understanding that there is an intelligence to nature and that we are nature.
I'm going to jump in, if that's okay, and just cycle back to Karina's piece around feeling her voice more open when she was bleeding. And it links into what Sarah was saying, is that our blood is just as the cervix is a gateway, it's a portal. And we, you're a sound healer, but many people don't realize that the cervix and the vocal cords are connected. you know, and the more open that is, the more open our voice is. And we might go further into something like that in one of our workshops with the womb voice work. But for this piece, I feel to share that just as the moon time in the cycle is a portal, the blood actually is a connection. It's what we call in many of the teachings that I work with, the red thread. So I feel the psychic connection to that red thread that the blood represents, then reconnects us to the wisdom and the echoes of pain or past hurts or joy and celebration of every woman in our lineage. And I do know other singers that say this, and they say that, you know, and Mariah Stark, she has that song, The Women in Her Lineage, and it comes through when she's bleeding, you know. So this portal of blood, this psychic connection and ability, when we gift ourselves that time of stillness, like deep, deep rest, where we're able to hear these echoes. And some of the past life experiences I've had have been nothing short of miraculous. A quick example is each month when my PMDD was flaring up, I would find that my hips would spread as if I was ready to give birth. And this is what the osteopaths were like in a quandary about what was going on. And also my shoulders started to like really ache. I was being treated for all of these things like bursitis with steroid injections. And when I started to listen and truly deeply listen to what was going on, dreams started coming in through my expanded psychic awareness, which was gifted me through Stillness and cleaning up my diet. And I was dreaming of a past life where I was on a stretching rack, and I was able to reconnect to that life, that person, that dear sweetheart that was, you know, experiencing this agony and this pain that just really was crying out to be loved and to be able to, you know, share what happened to her. So this piece around our blood and our moon cycle being a portal to me just really lands, and it just is like one of the things that the patriarchal society knew about when they come in. I'm talking about the church now. When they come in and change the piece around, you know, the womb as being the sacred cup and our blood being the gift of life, they changed it to like the goblet of wine, and they started to create separation between women. And this is where the sisterhood wound started to come through. We didn't connect like this. We weren't meeting in the red tents or the womb caves and sharing our love and our stories. So yeah, this piece, thank you for reminding me of that, Karina. It just was like, wow, around how potent connecting to the blood truly is just, again, it's miraculous. As far as Jodie's question, because I detoured a bit there, sorry loves, this is a very short answer. Like working with my cycle now, I am fully able to have an embodied no. That's more than any time ever before in my life. I'm able to say no. It's a clear no, and I know exactly why I'm saying no. I'm going to say no to an event or an engagement or to an interview or to having to do anything other than lay in my bed and clear ancestral wounds on day 1, day 2, day 3 of my bleed. I also know when to say yes, more so than ever before. So yeah, short answer, but a long way round there. Yeah. Jennifer.
Yeah, I honestly feel like you guys have given, you beautiful women have given amazing answers, and I made some notes and then everyone just added those pieces. So it feels like we're super in flow. So maybe just to sort of summarize, is like just knowing where we're at in our cycle, and it's always going to be individual for each of us. So we can give like a general overview of like when generally women have more energy or need to be more internal, but it's going to differ for each of us as individuals. And then once we're able to track that and get to know ourselves, then knowing like what it's best for us to be doing in those different phases in terms of creation or recording music, and we're all creative beings all the time. You know, we're not like, some of us aren't artistic or some of us are more creative. It's like, no, that is innate in all of us. And the more we connect to our cycle and our wisdom as women, the more we really unleash our creativity. But amazing answers. I'm like learning so much from all of you. Thank you, loves.
Oh, I love talking about this stuff so much. It's profound. And I was just feeling a moment of gratitude in my heart that in our lifetime, we're all seeing this wisdom come back. I mean, when I was young, I remember sitting with all my friends at school and we'd have to sneak away in like a cubby house and talk about periods and stuff because we'd get in trouble for talking about it. And I used to love talking about it. And you know, that's, as women, we're meant to sit in a circle, we're meant to share our wisdom, and finally it's coming back online, and being here with all of you feels like a big step in that direction. That's where this kind of vision came from, is let's get this wisdom out into the world, because I was so alarmed to find out that 95% of research for like health is done on men, because it's too expensive to study on women because our hormones are changing every moment. So for any of the women out there that are going through things, I just want to share with you that connecting with your cycle could be the answer. It really could be the missing link. And I also truly believe that this is what will change the world, is women reconnecting with their bodies and their cycles. So if you're watching this, I really encourage you to start to pay attention to what's happening in your body and what's changing and shifting, and to love that, because when you understand, it's actually a superpower, one of the best superpowers that we have. And not that we're superior to men or anything, you know, them having that, you know, same energy all the time is needed to help us and just support us and hold us. And I feel like we also need to educate men, and men need to learn about this too. And whenever I mention it to a man, they're like, please tell me everything. I need to understand why women are changing. And to them, I say, you know, you're dating 4 different women in a month, and you know, you don't need to be polyamorous because we're constantly changing and evolving, you know. So yeah, does anyone else have anything you want to say in relation to like any messages for women out there that are thinking about getting started, where to get started? What would anyone wants to chime in?
Adrenals and nervous system comes first. And you know, like we can get all of these herbal protocols made up and these tinctures and this and that, but the only answer is to slow down and completely rewire your entire nervous system. And it's not going to happen overnight. It probably won't even happen over 12 months. It is a lifelong experience of living in societies and cultures that have indoctrinated women to disconnect from their feminine energy. And I know that that's why all of these beautiful sisters and myself came to Bali, because it's the biggest permission slip to live a life of slowing down and listening and attuning to the body. And that will naturally, along with the trauma work, you know, that we're all naturally doing together and individually, that will rewire the nervous system, and it will start to rebuild the adrenal glands. And from there, you know, of course, like bring in the diet, bring in the cleansing, the herbs, the supplements, whatever else that resonates. But we can't bypass the nervous system and the adrenals, you know, otherwise we're spending all of our money on organic food and all of these other solutions that, you know, they just can't have a huge lasting impact until we've done that deeper foundational work.
Can I add to that and just say, if you're not sure where to start by having your space held. Choose somebody to work with, and somebody who you know or you feel comfortable to assist you in unraveling the nervous system and helping you to understand yourself and your trauma, because it's like once that starts to heal and you start to feel safe inside your body, that's, you know, and then all the other stuff comes, like Sarah said. So yeah, work with people. We're better together.
One idea that came in for me was just doing a simple journaling exercise around what it means to be a woman, and letting your mind just dump like all the negative, all the positive, but just get it down on paper. Maybe set a timer for 10 minutes and just write it out. Being a woman means that I do. Because there's just so much there inside our minds. There's so many beliefs that we often don't consider. I started leading women's circles about 12 years ago, I think. And I didn't have any tools. It was in Nepal in the Himalaya. And I said to a few of my girlfriends, I feel like just getting together with some of you women and just talking. And someone's like, oh, women's circle. And I was like, yeah, I guess it would be a circle of women. Yeah. And then I led my first ever women's circle, not having any tools. I was just really into meditation. And it was amazing. And as I started leading them with a bit more structure, the thing that I always worked on first was competition. The competition and the jealousy that we feel in our sisterhood. Often that's there until we've done some of the first layers of work. And one of the reasons why the 5 of us can jump on this Zoom call and just be so excited by each other is that we've done our own work, and I'm not competing with anyone else on this call, or like, well, they spoke for this long, so I need to speak for that long. And does everyone know that I'm actually the best person on this call? And you know, and this is one of the amazing gifts as women, is we naturally want to support each other and lift each other up. You know, but in order to get there, in order to get there, like looking at what's under the surface, looking at what our beliefs are, because that's what's actually holding us back from stepping into that natural, gorgeous, rich sisterhood that is actually there. So yeah, thank you.
Amazing, Jennifer. You are the best person on this call. There you are. I feel
equally, together with everyone else, we're all the best.
I was going to say, and Karina, you're the best person. Sarah, you're the best person. Jodie, you're the best person. And I'm the best person. The piece for me that I just want to weave into this is, yes, journaling, absolutely, 100%. It's like the simplest way to start to understand and track your cycle. So if you don't already know where you are in your cycle, you can prepare yourself for the first day of your bleed and mark that as day 1. And that's the first day of your winter. And start there. And be curious on day 1 where the moon is. And then just start to gently take notice of how you feel in that space, where the moon is, with the resting, and maybe ask yourself a few questions such as, what did I dream? What am I craving? How is my outward expression? Am I alive and vibrant, feeling dynamic, or am I feeling like going within and retreating? So there are a few key questions, which, again, we'll share more of this in workshops and things that I use to be able to get a really good indicator over a period of around 3 to 6 months of what's alive in you on each and every day in your cycle. And this is gold. This is like such incredible data to be able to access your superpowers, as Jodie calls it. So if that's my place to start. And there's also a piece in there that when you are starting this work, my beautiful sisters around the world that are watching this, just feel what's coming up for you. There could be grief. And for me, when I started this work, I felt quite a bit of grief for myself for not knowing this any sooner. And the grief was coming for not just me, for my sisters, for my mother and grandmother that didn't have this language and didn't know any different, you know? And we've been in this society that celebrates the summer or the maiden for over 2,500 years. So there could be quite a bit of grief to come up. So just be aware of that and nurture yourself and hold yourself tight in those moments and just know you're not alone. Yeah.
Yeah, I really mirror and share that the importance of journaling is so important, because we can read a book or articles and it can say in the luteal phase you feel like this, and when you're ovulating you feel like this. But to be honest, like that's not usually the case, because we're all so unique, we're all so different, and from month to month we're constantly changing. And this is why connecting with your cycle is the way that we connect to our intuition, because we really start to understand what's happening in our body. And that's why when Rebecca said before, she's like, I know my know, because when we become connected, we're like, I know what's best for me right now. And when you start to speak about this openly, like even with Rebecca a couple of days ago, we were meant to be meeting up to do something. I was about to message her and I looked at my phone. She's like, if you're not feeling great, it's okay. And I actually just had a period that was really quite heavy, and I never ever get that. It's almost like she tuned into my energy. She knew what I needed, and she just welcomed that. And I'm the same. If someone says, I'm not feeling like it today, or I'm not feeling like doing this, I'm like, okay, like I honor you as a woman, I honor your cycle. And this is where it really starts to lock in. So I find asking my friends where they're at in their cycle and talking about this is where a lot of the growth came from for me. So I recommend doing that as well. But so grateful for us all here together, and I feel like we could talk about this for so long, and there will be more to come. I'm going to be sharing in the link, like the writing below, links to all of these beautiful women's work, and we're doing a beautiful workshop tomorrow together in person here in Bali, actually, which will be recorded as well. And there's going to be lots of different things coming out. So this is only just the beginning. And please share this with your friends, share this with other women, mothers, daughters, grandmothers, everyone, your partners. We all need to understand this wisdom, and it really will change the world. So yeah, thank you. Any last words from anyone at all?
I want to give a big shout out to any men who are watching this. Like, just thank you for taking this time and for caring about the women in your life and being willing to sit through this, and know that you're loved and you're so deeply respected and admired, and you are not the problem. So clear any guilt that you have, and just thank you from my heart to yours for being willing to watch this and educate yourself.
Thank you. I love you all, and yeah, speak to you soon.